in just a few moments. It takes a few seconds, I think, to propagate to everything. Let me double check that we're coming through. But yeah, Dan, the first couple of minutes, we make a few announcements. We make sure that we are indeed live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. I do see us on Restream, so I think we are good. There's a notification for Dave as well.
Yep, I see it. This is very good. And so, Dan, in the beginning, we go through and we have what I call a couple of community comments as we let everyone get in, because the first couple of times we did this, apparently it's really boring to have like 3 minutes of dead time as people are just talking around it. So one of my favorite parts of all of this is I call it the this is when Dave embarrasses Vlad, because as I'm sure you know, Dan, Vlad has a really good YouTube channel, Solus PLC. If you guys aren't subscribed, you should subscribe, because Vlad has cracked 22,000 subscribers. He continues to push a bunch of great content out, and we are in the running for 50,000 and then 100,000, because we want a silver play button up in the top left corner of this screen.
Somewhere here.
And this is for
Thanks,
Lisa.
Dave.
She made a comment in LinkedIn, and she asked because of a issue I had yesterday. So there you go, Lisa.
I saw that. Is there a story behind that before we?
Yeah, yesterday I went into Speedway to get coffee, and I forgot to pay as I was walking out, because I couldn't find my badge to get into like stuff, and I usually keep it on my right side, but I attached it to my left side, and I didn't realize that, so I drove all the way home to figure it out, and I posted about it on LinkedIn as my day was starting. So yeah,
Gotcha.
that's the story behind it. So.
All right, Dave, do you want to make a couple of announcements and dive into today's episode?
Absolutely. So we actually have a very exciting announcement. Everyone will have remembered Preston. Preston Hadley. He's been on the show a couple of times. He has somehow already to the third Change a Life giveaway, and I feel like they get better and better every time, Vlad. So this one, he's got a list. So it's got a Siemens S7 1500 PLC. He's got an S210 servo kit. So he's got a Siemens servo kit, and then they've got the TIA portal included in that, which should be very exciting. And then you guys, Vlad, are kind of in conjunction to this, also doing some YouTube videos to kind of go through that kit. Is that correct?
Yeah, up until the draw date, which is by the end of next month, so by the end of September 2021, we're releasing a video every week outlining different steps and how you can get started on a Siemens TIA portal kit. So it's very relevant to what Preston's giving away and just general information on Siemens programming. So yeah, I think it's a bar set extremely high in this giveaway, and I really hope that going forward, Preston only continues to get great sponsors for these.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so I have dropped the link to Preston's Change Your Life giveaway in the LinkedIn, and we'll get them in
So did I.
of the chat. Okay, perfect. So everyone has no excuse. And I guess as we talk about this, we should mention his goal has always been, how can we get the hardware into the hands of younger people who want to get into the industry, people who may not have necessarily been able to afford this. So if you guys are mid to late in the career and you already have a nice demo rack like Vlad does, as everyone can see, please maybe go ahead and pass this along to someone who may not already have the hardware or may want to get into the industry.
Awesome, Dave. Do you want to introduce the episode and our guest a little bit?
Absolutely. Everyone, welcome to episode 26 of Manufacturing Hub with me, Dave, and this guy over here, Vlad. Today we have a very special guest, Dan Staifer of Johns Manville. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. Happy to be here. So
appreciate your time, Dan, for sure. And I guess to get us started, because we spoke a little bit yesterday and last week, and you got a very unconventional path, I would say, in manufacturing. You've taught a little bit, you've joined a college, and then now you've transitioned into a more traditional engineering management role. So why don't you give us a little bit of an introduction of that path? And I know there's many tangents again that we can take, but I want to start at the beginning of how you got into manufacturing in the first place.
Well, again, this is a path that I'm sure most in the industry have never taken, and I'm a trailblazer, but it's all good. But basically, I was one of those high school kids that were told, "Hey, you're good at math and science, especially chemistry." So I went to the University of Toledo, got a degree in chemical engineering. Going through my co-ops, I co-opted places like Poly One up in Avon Lake, Ohio, and Cooper Tire and Rubber Company in Findlay, Ohio. It was okay, but it wasn't really for me. It kind of wasn't really for me almost. And I had people tell me, "You're not a typical engineer. You like people too much." And I was an RA. I was doing teaching and things of that nature already, and tour guiding and things of that nature. And I never felt like industry was a good fit for me coming out of college. And maybe it's because the field I chose was chemie, which was just like watching a bunch of liquids and pipes and seeing things happen, or ooh, a distillation tower, awesome, or here's a absorption tray that you get to watch things go over. So it never really got me like excited for anything. So I actually went off into seminary and got a master's of divinity in church history, and was a pastor for about 5 years. Now, while I was going through there, that my engineering degree allowed me to work at Procter and Gamble for a year, doing like trace mineral analysis up in Mason, Ohio, with their oral healthcare division. So it got me some really good part-time jobs, and I did some things like that. But it was more. It wasn't really necessary. I was more about people and helping people and troubleshooting like life and stuff. But when I was in a small town outside of Fort Wayne, I was actually teaching at a career technical center called Vantage Career Center in Van Wert, Ohio. They needed a science teacher for the rest of the year, and I started teaching there, and it got me into the education system. I used that to start then teaching part-time at Ivy Tech Fort Wayne. For those that don't know, Ivy Tech Community College is the only community college in the state of Indiana. So if you go to certain, like Ohio, for instance, may have things like St. Clair and Tri-C or Owens, and those are all independents. In Ivy Tech, it's all under one umbrella. So in theory, Evansville, Kokomo, Terre Haute, all of it's going to be the same under the same leadership, just different pockets of the state. So I was tutoring in math and science and doing adjunct math at Ivy Tech in Fort Wayne. For a lot of reasons, I got out of the ministry and took a job at Ivy Tech Richmond as a career technical education advisor, doing healthcare advising and working with CTE students. And while there, Ivy Tech rolled out the advanced automation and robotics degree statewide. And they could not find anyone that was willing to move to Richmond, Indiana, which, if those that don't know, Richmond, Indiana is equal distance between Dayton, Ohio and Indianapolis, Indiana on I-70, right on the state line. So if you see 70 in Ohio and Indiana state line, Richmond's right there. You might know him through Tom Raper RB. But it's a good community. But I took a job here, and they couldn't find anyone to move here to teach PLCs and robotics. And because I had a teaching background, had that engineering degree, they took a chance on me, and I ended up becoming department chair, learning things on the job, and we can get into that a little bit more. And through things, I became the assistant statewide chair in industrial technology and machine tool technology, so CNC machining. And keep in mind, I had no experience in this stuff. I was just kind of going along, learning it on the job, going to OEM trainings and trainings at a company called Amatrol that makes educational trainers, and just picking things up as I go, finding guys like Sean Tierney, Tim Wilborn, Vlad, anyone that I could find to glean from them, and get that. But the benefit of working at a college is I could get access to that software for free and just work with things. But then after a few years, I got to the point where I was ready for a change. And through my connections, I had some students that have been working at Johns Manville in Richmond. For those that don't know, Johns Manville is a Berkshire Hathaway company and they make a lot of building construction materials and engineering products. This plant here in Richmond makes fiberglass blowing wool, a brand called Climate Pro, for instance. And they were looking for an engineering maintenance manager because the person that was in that role got a promotion within the division. He was on my advisory board. He put a good word in for me. And long story short, I ended up there in April, and I've been there since April. And it's been a learning process in many ways.
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of things that we can explore. But let's chat about the earlier days. So chemical engineering. I'm wondering, maybe what fell short in your maybe expectations? Because I know that even, speaking for myself, once you graduate with a certain engineering degree, you always kind of look back and think, well, what if I went into like mechanical? What if I went into software? What if I went into, there's different engineering fields. And I think it's important to maybe, again, not everybody understands all the nuances and doesn't have the same expectations as when you get into the job, the industry.
I think for me, it was process control related. Everything with chemical engineering is that idea of PID loops, flows, formulas. It was math heavy, but it was hard for me to get my hands around. Like my first job in high school was working at a hardware store in the fastener department and doing electrical stuff. I think I was by nature a little more hands on in the way I want to go things. Like chemical engineering, if you get hands on, you're getting chemical burns. Yeah, so or some of the labs were fun, but it was just kind of like, here, let's watch this pipette in a Bunsen burner for 3 hours and watch it turn color. It wasn't anything like exciting. Like it was doing good things. Don't get me wrong. I got some good friends that are chemical engineers still. I'm biased because I think it gave me a good foundation. But for me, what the clincher was I was at a company. I was at Poly One doing my co-oping, and it got me thinking that I didn't have any say in what products I didn't have a say in what products I could get into. And one of the products was a plastics for an adult toy manufacturer. And it just got me thinking about consumer, and I was young, naive, I was a young college kid. Hey, let's change the world. I've kind of changed that from seeing people get jobs, and especially working with skilled trades, and just how kind of naive and how pie in sky thinking I was with things. But for me, I wanted to do something more to change the world than just be in manufacturing. However, going through education and seeing men and women get good jobs and realizing, there's something noble with getting a job to feed your family and helping others around you feed your family. It changed my perspective being around actually good, hardworking people and actually seeing more of that technology side, not just the theoretical side of chemistry. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think, again, I've heard similar stories from, I think, again, engineers in general. I think that, again, I want to use the word like true engineers really want to be hands-on, but the reality of engineering, I think, is that there's still a lot of documentation, there's a lot of calculations, and there's a lot of, maybe desk work that's not as exciting for the engineer per se, and it varies again depending on where you go. I think like chemical is going to be a lot more of that. Same with, let's say, industrial, right? You're going to do a lot of like plan reviews. It's very standardized. And I think even in automation in certain sectors, if you go into pharmaceuticals, for example, it's going to be a lot more focused on like the design process and documentation in general. So I think like for sure there's going to be differences in various engineering fields. But yeah, no, I really appreciate your perspective.
And I think one thing I will tell students that student that's their junior year of engineering and thinking about changing to business or changing to math, teaching or whatever, is finish up that engineering degree. You never know what opportunities. Like here, I got 3 of my jobs after the fact because I got that one degree first. And I wasn't a slouch. I had a 3.6 GPA and I got stuff done. And I wasn't, and I was doing good things. It just wasn't something that at the time I was passionate about. Now later, getting into PLCs, robotics, that's fun. I enjoyed doing that and making, as I jokingly tell students, it's like video game programming, except you're not changing pixels, you're actually moving physical objects in space. That's really cool.
Which could still be scary for some people.
It is, and especially when that thing could come down on you and crush you if you're not careful. But it is. I wish I would have understood that more as an option, because I might have changed my degree path a little bit. But again, that was in 2000, 2001, different world back then. And, I was, 4-year engineering degree or bust, because that was what the smart people did. So, yeah.
And so moving on to your master's, I'd be interested, if you can obviously share non-personal reasons for going that route, and also I think maybe some of the benefits of again, because you talked a lot about being a people-oriented person, right? Like you're not maybe someone who just sits there and tinkers with hardware and software on your own. You
Yeah.
like to maybe train others, explain things, and work with other colleagues. Did that like impact your assumptions?
Well, it did. It did in a lot of ways. One, it didn't. It helped me see how bad at English I was. Because one of the classes, and it was funny. One of the classes I had to take, because and then did I'm a Christian first and foremost. That's what guides me in a lot of my decision making. And in my head, I wanted to go, change the world, help people in that way, and I thought that was a better way than doing teaching. But during the process, I had to take Koine Greek, which is what the New Testament is written in. And I actually used my chemical engineering to think, it's just like chemical equations going together. I wrote a cell macro to help me kind of do like flashcards. But through the process, I realized how bad I was at communicating, because I had to learn what an aorist tense is, what is past perfect plural, and learn good sentence structure. And it got me better as communicator to think through about what is the essence of communication, and get me through that more the ethos and pathos of communication. So it's not just brute force facts and figures. And coming into education land, or coming into it allowed me to understand how to talk across generations and across different types of people, because it makes me think about what is their motivations, what makes them go, what makes them tick, more so. And that's why I think a lot of engineers do MBAs, is for that same reason, is because they feel like they're lacking in some way. Yes, you get that accounting, you get some of those books, but it's that lacking that people skills that you never really got in engineering school, and unless you were a part of a fraternity or some type of other campus organization, you never really had the ability to flex those muscles. So for me, going through that helped me just even think through about how to communicate, get better with English, written and verbal. We only did tech writing, but now I'm a little bit stronger at communication. I had to learn Robert's Rules of Order at some point too, which was helpful to do, in those fringe benefits of networking. When you're going to like a Rotary Club meeting, you understand some of that stuff. So it gave me some of those other aspects to help me navigate, to learn what networking is and communicating and small talk. Because after all, my last 2 jobs came basically because of the networks I built.
Right. And I think me and Dave have emphasized that a couple of times. I think it's really important. And again, since our audience is dominated, I would say, by engineers, it's something that I think everyone should pay close attention to with regards to themselves, right? And be able to realize that you lack those skills and take the necessary steps to fix it, so to speak. But no, it's an interesting, I guess, the path for sure, Dan. And it's
that left brain, right brain action,
Yep.
Faith versus science type of thing. And I kind of meet in the middle. But when in education land, I don't think people realize, like when you see teachers in the manufacturing world and education, usually they're limited by that educational path because everything is biased towards that master's degree.
Mm-hmm.
In skilled trades land, I had adjuncts teaching for me. The only thing that they had was a journey person's card. They may have never taken an English class. They may have never taken a communication class. So they have all of these things against them. So it makes them harder for them to communicate and teach. And then we ask them to do all these like professional development things and teach, and it's hard for them to then move up. Or when you're in a school of technology, the only people with master's degrees are the ag teachers and the engineers. The skilled trades guys and women,
Mm-hmm.
they go for certifications, they go for other things. So it's hard for them to move up and become a dean and make those changes because they may only have an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree, because there's no return for the reward. Because if they want to move up, they'll just go back into industry or consult somewhere.
Yeah, no, and I want to get into the, I guess, educational system a little bit more, since you've got a lot of knowledge in that. But I guess first and foremost, you touched up a little bit on that, but I want to expand on the fact that you had to learn everything that you were going to teach as you were hired into that position. And you mentioned, they couldn't find anybody who was even remotely knowledgeable, and you came in with an engineering degree from the industry, and you still had the knowledge of, again, how manufacturing worked, as you've held those jobs, and you understood math and physics really well. And I want to, I guess, like, the question is, long story short, is how was the process of learning those things and transitioning again from chemical engineering into automation?
It was a challenge. The one thing I had going for me, at least I understood electricity from actually doing residential electricity at the hardware store. So I understood the basics of that. I did some type of programming. I understood Excel programming, which if you can understand how to do macros and other things, that can translate well. So maybe I haven't did Python or C+ programming. Excel programming can be, it gives you that linear mindset of kind of working through independent variables versus dependent variables and things of that nature. So when I first got there, I was kind of a little bit lost because I learned the components. My first platform I learned off of was an S7300 down at Amatrol, because that was the only training class I could get in at the time. The Allen Bradley's ones were filled up. And
sorry, do you want to give us a quick Amatrol, just a quick background for those who are not familiar maybe with the company?
Amatrol is a company based out of Jeffersonville, Indiana, that makes educational trainers. If you see blue educational trainers at a community college, it's probably produced by Amatrol. They produce e-learning content, they produce labs, and that are meant for high schools and college and career technical centers and colleges to give them a turnkey way of teaching and trying to give them and be responsive to industry and give them like real world applications. So instead of trying to figure out something on your own, here's a board already to go where you can plumb up with quick connects hydraulic circuit, or using banana plugs, setting up a 3-phase motor. Now it's 208, which we can get into it later, or like pre-made packages of like PLC programming kits, so that there's labs already made and there's e-learning content that can supplement. They're a good company. They make really good trainers. They have good things that will set up for both non-credit training and credit training. Some of these certifications out there use a lot of Amatrol e-learning certifications like MSSC, Manufacturing Standards Skill Council. Their certified production technician is built off of Amatrol, but they're based out of just out of Louisville, and that's all they do. Other companies like Festo, LabVolt also do trainers like that as well. But that's where a lot of education, like Amanda last week, I work with Amanda. They produce a Siemens suitcase trainer and curriculum, because for schools, there's not a lot of time to develop curriculum. So if you give me something turnkey, and in light of some of the things I talked about, where if you're an adjunct and all you have is Journey Purchase Card, I need all the tools I can get. And this gives me a prepackaged setup where I can roll out and then supplement with the hands-on, or in my case, supplement with YouTube videos and other things. So, but if you buy one of their trainers, they'll take you down, train you down at their facility for basically peanuts on a dollar. So because they're an Indiana company, I was able to go down there, spent 2 weeks there doing PLC training with a guy from Canada who came in for the week just to train. And then the next week learning on their mechatronic system, which is a integrated small assembly line that we can use in a classroom environment to kind of separate and say, oh, here's a pick and place station, here's a sorting station. And we can kind of put faults in and in a safe, small lab scale environment, talk about mechatronics and computer integrated manufacturing and some things, and talk about faults. So I would use that to electrical tape around input the wires, or pull out wires and give them the tech documents, say, hey, let's now go find it, and try to tell me why. Hey, there's 0 voltage on this. Well, does that mean there's no power? No, it means it's at the same potential and getting them to teach through that troubleshooting mindset. So my first experience was there, and if you've ever worked with this 300s, it's not the easiest to learn on, but it gave me at least an understanding of ladder logic. And then when I got back, I started piddling around with Studio 5000. I had to learn how to integrate that into a system where you don't have admin rights, and kind of navigated that, and it taught me how to learn and develop with these trainers, and I just learned on the job. I reached out to counterparts throughout the state, guys like Robert Parker out of Fort Wayne, who's an awesome dude out of Ivy Tech campuses, other people like Bryce Eaton, Joel Oddie, I'm going to name drop these guys because they were helpful along the way, because why not? And just share knowledge. And I just learned. And in some cases it was working with Amanda and setting up a training at like a campus and do the Siemens 1200 series, basic and advanced, and just do it there with all the instructors.
Mm-hmm.
And it's at that point I realized, I hate to say it, I wasn't that far away from a lot of these guys, because a lot of guys were like specialists in one thing and they were trying to learn all this stuff. So it kind of allowed me to get rid of that imposter syndrome and just realize we're all just trying to learn this and we just shared information, shared, labs, and just kind of move on. And so one of the things I liked about Ivy Tech was that cross campus collegiality and helping and sharing of stuff. And that really helped out. Really, it helped me grow, because I could just plagiarize and steal other people's stuff. And eventually that's why we started developing courses, shells that we could give out to adjuncts so that they could start somewhere. So it wasn't starting at ground zero.
Yeah, no, a lot of really interesting info there, Dan. Really appreciate it. What about, so I want to go back, when you were getting started, so your scope initially was like PLC, HMIs, and robotics programming, or did that expand like over the years and you had to grow that branch of the college?
Yeah, like, and by the way, I also went to OEM trainings with Fanuc and Yaskawa Moto Man. So going to Mason, going to Miamisburg, and going there. So that helped me get the robotics side and just playing around on campus. I forgot to mention that, but mostly those are because I had the education background. When a spot opened up, become department chair, they just moved me in because I already did the advising and other stuff, so I knew the education side. So that was easy to move into. But usually it was just wherever I could get my load, I would teach. So sometimes I was teaching hydraulics, pneumatics, which wasn't too much difficult for me to pick up because of chemie, and I did plumbing in the past. I had taught some mechanical classes, which weren't my favorite, but has come in handy now because now I have a better understanding of certain things because it forced me. And as I told a lot of my adjuncts, you don't have to be the teacher. You just have to be the best student in the class and beat people by a week. and in some cases, I remember my first class teaching like a electrical troubleshooting class. I screwed up the NPN and PNP thing on an exam, and it kind of humbled me, and I just move on. Mm-hmm. I jokingly tell the students the only difference between me and you is I've read a few more books and I catch my mistakes faster. And that's usually lends things well and give them that sense of it's okay to make mistakes, because that's how you learn. Just don't keep repeating them and and don't give up and throw your hands up in the air.
Well, speaking of students, and Dave, I don't know if you maybe want to throw in a question. I've got a couple of follow-ups. Do you have anything?
I do, yes.
Okay,
So Dan, you were talking about all of this great on-the-job training, and the on-the-job experience was at least as much you trying to stay a week ahead of the students that you were trying to train. And I would, over a number of years, you have kind of learned everything. Would you say the on-the-job training of I have to learn it myself so I can teach it was valuable? What was it, as you were self-driven? Was that a valuable education for you?
Yeah, because I don't like looking like a fool. And
okay.
So that imposter syndrome and that internal thing of I don't like looking like an idiot drove me to figure things out and go deeper. So like I was probably one of the first people in the system that worked with Fanuc to get PAC codes enabling Ethernet IP on my robots. Partly because I was lazy and didn't want to solder a Honda connector 1,000, but I knew that's where things are going. So and then that opened up other options, or seeing that IO Link is becoming more popular. Working with Kurt Radcliffe at IFM and trying to get some sensors in and doing that and being on the front end of that. That was all stuff I wanted to be because I knew we were a smaller campus, and I wanted us to be relevant to industry, but also be proud of the manufacturing classes that we had. As a result, when the dean and department chair that hired me on went to their campus, I got put on the machine tool, which is CNC machining. I knew nothing of that. I inherited welding. I knew nothing of that. So the only thing I do is just go in, learn, and I ended up becoming the assistant state chair in machine tool. Even though I couldn't teach a CNC class to save my life, I do now know what milling and turning is, and tooling inserts, and making the mistake of buying non-hardened steel and trying to do parts of that nature. And just, so it gave me a chance to learn, only because I didn't want to look like a fool, but I knew there was a need that needed to be met. So someone needed to do it, and I had the leadership to do it.
Okay. So that's very interesting. And you mentioned Amanda, which would have been last week, episode 25, Amanda Beaton. So Amanda is from Siemens, who anyone doesn't know, and it's her job literally to find people like, I suppose you used to be, Dan, in order to help bring Siemens products. Do you find that there are many manufacturers looking to help bring their products to college campuses?
It's, Haas is really good with that.
Okay.
So there's scholarships with Haas to help pay for certifications. The Titans of CNC platform has been really good, partnering with like Autodesk, Mastercam, help bring this to lower cost. It's becoming more so. Fanuc's been really good.
Okay.
Their certified education program is awesome for educators because it gives curriculum, and there's a quality assurance to it, where I had to literally film myself teaching and then send it to them before they could check it off. So it's not just anything willy-nilly. And I actually got rejected the first time, and they had to re-record something. And their standards, even with, so there are people that are doing that. Lincoln is really good with that too. They have a great education program for welders that gives us penny on dollars. And I get why they do that. Is because once you become familiar, and I know this is a bad analogy, but it's like a drug dealer. Give me a taste and then you're hooked. I wish Rockwell would do more of that. I was on the last Expo online thing that they did. I was in a webinar thing, and they're trying to develop their e-learning content, but it's still at a high price for education people just to give out. Or their certification, you need to use one of their trainers, and it's great, but it comes with a catch. And we couldn't do that because of the way our trainers are set up. Now, guys like Pete Detmer up at Madison Community College, they do that, and that's and I highly recommend his stuff too. So I'm name dropping a lot of cool people right now that you should follow if you don't know, and see what they're doing in the education space. But they're producing content and then some type of OEM completion afterwards that provides some leg up. And my students that got that FANUC certification from me, on par with the OEM, gave them a leg up in the manufacturing world. And I wish more would do that. I think Siemens has a Siemens Level 1 mechatronics certificate, and I like that. That test is pretty good. Now, it's annoying that you can only test 2 days at one time, and they have to wait till some engineers in Germany to record it and grade it. But that test is really good at making people think through stuff. And I wish there was more of that integration with manufacturers doing their own tests, and because it's more, but it's hard. And I think more are coming around to it, because the more we put the good things out there and free content out there, the more the providers are putting it there. I know FANUC is putting out a CNC simulator for classrooms that I saw in content, which would be huge, because Haas has already got a lot of that out there. But I'm seeing it. I wish more would do it. But I also think local manufacturing needs to do more partnering with their local community colleges to help guide that through, because that's how I've learned a lot what's going on, by just partnering and with apprenticeships and other things at the local, and to see and meet their needs.
Dan, we have a question on YouTube, which I think is very interesting. It's from John Carson. He's asking, what brand is more prevalent in food and beverage? Should I be learning Siemens PLCs at this point? And I think, to elaborate a little bit more on that, the question of brands, but I think from a student standpoint, right? I'm assuming that once you join Ivy College, you can choose, which PLCs you learn. There's maybe a separate class, I don't know, for Siemens, for Allen Bradley, but I think it always is the question, right? Because in the industry, there's going to be 5+ different brands. How many should you know before, like, feeling comfortable or saying that you are a competent PLC programmer? What are your thoughts?
Well, it all depends on the area that you're working in. I taught Siemens, but I know of only one place in the area that even dabbles in Siemens, and they make content for like Mexico and other stuff like work holding from Mexico and other places, so they make it for that. Mostly it's Allen Bradley driven, Slick 500, Compact Logic, Control Logic, but we have one company that uses Omron here around locally, you know, and that's their standard. Or another company that uses Snyder.
Is there a way you'd recommend people find out? Like, I guess, like your students,
Yeah,
would you say that they should reach out? And
I think in America, you can't go wrong with Allen Bradley because they're the lion's share. Worldwide, it's Siemens. So one of those two, and if you learn both, the nice thing about Siemens, I think it obeys more of the IEC standards of programming. So it's more like, so for instance, when I picked up the micro 850s, that reminded me a lot of Siemens in the way it programs, because it's very similar to because it's built on that IEC standard that is worldwide, how addresses and do things. So if you can do one of those, I would say that. Like, I know the Automation Direct is popular because it's cheap and their software is free, but I don't know if it translates well to some of the big boys as these others one. If you're gonna start with a cheap one, I would start with the Micro 800s, because at least you can get exposed to Rockwell's idiosyncrasies, to say the least, and you can do a lot of good stuff with that. But I think it's just a matter of the area. We have one area in the state that they are Siemens heavy in the state of Indiana. So it just depends. We have a couple that want a Mitsubishi. And so I actually took a class or two on Mitsubishi, and other than being 6 hexadecimal based and X's and Y's, it was very similar. It's just a matter of how you go online with the software, and how the hardware addresses is the biggest differences oftentimes.
No, and I agree. I think you nailed it on the head. It really depends on the area. Again, I think you can translate your knowledge between the PLC platforms, but obviously when you come in to an interview, right, if you're just trying to join the company, then it helps having had at least some exposure, or having at least, PLC that you've at least went online with, right? Like, so you're familiar with, at least with the interface. But nowadays, I think you can simulate a lot of these things. So it's really, I think, not that difficult. If you're looking to get into Siemens from a different platform, then you can just get a simulator and at least get some hands-on experience that way.
And that's one thing that, if you're going to go to a community college or technical school, it's not necessarily to get the knowledge. The knowledge is out there. You can get it from Bat Lad, you can get it from the Tim Wilborns, you can get it from the Sean Tierney's, or the Stephen Gates. The knowledge is out there with the money. The problem is the access to the hardware and the software, and access to other peripherals to interface with. For $500, you could go to a community college, have a 16-week course, and if you were at we had open labs. I let students just come in and play until they're blue in the face, because that's how I learn. They're not going to be able to do anything. Heck, I had one student from the Indianapolis campus found me on YouTube, come to my lab in Richmond and log in to get additional lab support at one point, because I didn't care. I wanted people to be, get that stuff through, and there are benefit, and the other thing about schooling is that external accountability that you may not have over your shoulders. I can come along and say, hey, look, you got the same output in 2 rungs. That's why you're having epilepsy right now, because of blinky light. It allows me to come along and say, hey, check your address. Hey, or the most common one, run, Forrest, run. You're in program mode, put in run, things of that nature, where you could beat your head against the wall for 35 minutes, where I can come along, ask a simple question, and it just connects the dots. And having that accountability and that structure, saying that I am progressing, I'm getting that feedback. Where if you're in industry, the feedback is the line running? Is the machine going? It's instant. But if you're learning this, if you're an electrician learning this, you might need that extra feedback, and to swallow your pride and have someone that you're not working with tell you it's going to be okay. Because I get a lot of guys that doubt their skills, or gals, and I have to come along and say, you got this. Look at this. This is what you just did, and give them and build them up, because this is something they've never seen before, never done before. And just and give that not pat on the back, but let's keep in mind, a lot of community college and first generation college students, they have that mindset that they can't be successful, so they need that teacher, the other person, to be their cheerleader.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think again, I think it's important to recognize that these systems are complex in their own nature, right? It's software and hardware combined together, so you need typically the knowledge of three areas, right? You need the hardware, you need the software like I said, and then you have the process as well. So understanding what you're trying to accomplish or do in the real world. And to be quite frank, I don't think many engineers master all those areas very well, right? Like usually people either go into one, the other, or the third. But no, it's for sure as you said. I think it's important to encourage people. It's important to show them that it's doable. It just takes time and effort, right, to get there.
Mhm.
Dan, let me ask you a follow-up question. So you
Okay.
mentioned certifications, and I feel like the concept of certifications comes up a lot in our conversations, at least in part with Vlad talking about should I go get, these certifications. Can you tell us, kind of from your perspective of offering students many certifications and then watching them transition to industry, are the certifications important to employers, at least when you're getting started in a position?
It helps kick the door in a little bit
Mhm.
because it gives you that, but I don't know. It's the thing that you can rest on to say, now I've arrived.
Mhm.
You know, certifications are good, but there's a bit of a trap in education that we use certifications to validate that we're doing a good job so that we can go back to the state and say, look at what a good job we're doing. And so there's always that politics game and whether hook or by crook, but high schools have to compete for funding. Colleges have to compete for funding. We need some way to vet the fact that we're doing, because unlike in manufacturing,
Mhm.
A plus B does not always equal C. A plus B plus Y plus Q, insert black box 2 years later, we can see the results of our work. There's
Mhm.
too many other things, but a third party certification allows us to say, okay, the students have met something of a knowledge base, and that's just not all book learning and participation points, because there is great inflation. No, going back to the thing I said earlier, a lot of people who have gone into college teaching and high school teaching may not have gotten a lot of education teaching on how to teach.
Mhm.
So there's some that benefit of just can I do it or not? Yes, but then they can't explain it to anyone. They don't have the knowledge base. So the best certifications are the ones that will combine both a third-party test with hands-on knowledge skill,
Mhm.
some type of skill vetting. So that's why there's organizations like NIMS, National Institute of Metalworking Standards. I always forget the last S, metalworking skills, I think, which is very big in machining, where they require you to produce a part that gets checked by a met tech industry partners, and then take a test for the certification to hold a weight. NIMS also has industrial maintenance certification that does the same thing, where someone checks off that you've done these things 3 times, and then you take a test. Same way, or SACA is a new one that's being geared to Industry 4.0, where you have to do some scenarios and then take a proctored test. So there's a both and, the showing and the doing. Some certifications are emphasis on doing, some are on showing.
Mhm.
There needs to be a combination. Like AWS welding, that's more their D11 certification for a lot is more of a showing, not a knowledge base. But if you do their AWS Sense, which is off the QC10 standards, that's testing and a visual representation. So there's a lot of confusion out there. And then when it comes to manufacturers, they've never heard any of this stuff. I'm sure half of you guys have never heard any of the stuff that I'm talking about. But if you go to education conferences and other things, these are trumpeted as a success. But the other benefit of the certification too, if you're working in industry, if you get that certification, a lot of times we can then give college credit for you so you can get closer to completing. I know a guy who's working at a local company, went through one of these skill-based programs, got the certification, that gave him 6 credit hours of stuff, used that as a way to get his foot in the door to complete his associate's degree. Now he's in Bloomington working at a pharmaceutical company as automation tech.
Very interesting.
So there's the other way in too, that you can use these certifications to get college credit for prior learning. And it's a lot easier than me trying to produce a portfolio and trying to do some other stuff to say, this knowledge base or a test out. I don't know if that I answered your questions, but to sum it all up, I think there's still some confusion on how best to use certifications in industry. Some of it is creating the salesable market to industry, say this is why the certification is value and merit, and some of it, and sometimes the certification company is creating the certification to justify their existence and trying to create that market and industry. So the best ones are ones saying, here it is, here's the market, here's the demand, here's the third party standard, kind of like an ISO 9000 or something like that, saying that there's quality and value to what the student learned.
No, absolutely. And so let me ask kind of a follow-up question. So you've had a number of years of watching your students graduate and then move into industry. Can you tell us how kind of your experience of watching them leave the community college and go into industry, and kind of how that transition has been, and maybe if it's picked up a lot in the last few years?
I would say in the
Excellent
area, I would say the area I'm in,
Mhm.
90% of the students were students already in manufacturing that were getting continuing ed and or getting their journey person's card through our educational facility to or get wage increases or keep the job they have and get better at the job they have.
Okay.
I have a couple instances of a student, and one of them is an electrician in the plant that I'm serving now. That he came to me, he was a CNA, and he was loving working with Arduinos and other things, and wanted to do programming. And he went through the school. We got him connected with a local manufacturer. He did okay there, but they got it at Johns Manville where I'm working now, and now he's a longer tenured electrician who's been there almost 3 years, and he's fixing things and really loves it. And to see him grow and mature has been amazing. And I've told him that. Because now he's one of the electricians under me, which has been really cool. So it's come full circle. And there's a couple other guys that are in that boat too that I'm currently working with, and seeing that and seeing guys grow. But most of the time it's they had a job, they didn't like it. This education allowed them to move on.
Okay.
I have some students. I got another student who came to me, who kind of moving around, didn't know what to do, got fired from a job in production. And I remember this one night when in a PLC class, he just wanted to give up. He was exasperated. He was literally cursing everything. And I just calmed him down, take one thing at a time. He got through the program, and now he's working at Suncoke as an automation person, making $34 an hour, in Middletown. And he's doing okay. He's still trying to figure out what he wants to do. But now he's got options. He wants to go into IT. Which was controls. I'm like, that's perfect. Go get that Cisco and other things. And, now you're going to be an OT. And if you need a job, now's the time to do it. And I got no guys that can get you in that field if you want. But it just allowed him other opportunities because now he has a base job to build off of and then do something else. I had another student who had a bachelor's degree in history. And he wasn't a coach, so he couldn't find a job anywhere. So he got in production at a local glass bottle making company, and he got in an apprenticeship program there, got through it, and now he's a salary management person. So it just provided a lot of opportunities, and I have guys working with Amazon teaching robotics that I used to be students of. I had a guy that was basically, we got him through a CT and automation controls by basically Johnny cashing one piece at a time to this thing together and kind of getting him through this math requirement. And now he's basically kicking butt in Terre Haute, as a controls guy, working mostly with Siemens, by the way. So, there's a lot of those stories, but there's also stories of the students that they tried their best and just couldn't get an industry because it wasn't right for them. And that's always hard, but at least they found that out. But because of the way financial aid works and other things, you need them to complete a degree. You need them to finish something, and you can tell their heart wasn't in it. But I have more stories of the positives, like I just said, than others. And that's what education thrives in, is seeing those success stories.
Well, Dan, let me maybe follow up on Dave's question, but at the same time segue us into today's role that you're currently holding. And so now you're looking at candidates coming in from the other side, right? So they finished either certifications, they've learned on their own, they've learned, again, through an engineering degree, college, technical degree, what have you. What are maybe some of the things that you're probably hiring engineers, you're hiring technicians, so different levels, of course, and there's variables. Yep. But what do you look for in those individuals? Again, maybe eliminating the conversation, but first on paper. Are you looking for certain certificates? Are you looking for certain courses completed? What are your thoughts around that?
Well, a couple things. I work at a facility that is union. So the skilled trades is union. So that creates its own differences on things. And mostly the fact that with one pay scale for everyone, the people coming through the door needs to be similar or very close to the people that are already there, or it creates issues inside of things.
Mhm.
Also, the complex nature of the process and kind of like the how dangerous certain things are. It's hard for us to have someone off the street that doesn't have that knowledge base come in, especially mechanically. And what I find is a lot of people do some basic mechanical stuff, but don't know how to set a pump, don't know how to do straight edge alignments on shafts, don't have a basic understanding of flow control. And they've been maintenance guys for a while, but maybe there may be strong fabricators or strong put it together people or done maintenance, like building maintenance, but they don't have that industrial side of this is how we set using, come-alongs and using rigging equipment, or how to troubleshoot a conveyor belt. Because I think the three things I wish we could teach more in a community college setting is conveyor belt technology, like how to track a belt, how to, what web align, belt alignment, and transporting goods, because so much is running off of conveyor belts in motion. I don't think we do as servants a favor doing that. Pump technology, there's so much that we have a pumps class, but it's kind of like at Ivy Tech, but it's more of a, this is a pump, this is what it does. It doesn't go into detail of some other aspects of sizing and some of the science behind it, I think, but mostly more people should be exposed to it. And I just think some general preventative maintenance understanding of why greasing is important and other things that we have to teach people. I will say it's hard to capture that at a community college, some of that mechanical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Electrical, we can't do 480 volt because of the cost and also the liability, because we can't give everyone our flash suits. But again, then we teach the students on 208 low voltage, which we can get by with, but it still creates that non-real world feel, uncanny valley feel of things. So where you can still teach them the concepts, it may produce some bad habits and safety. If that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Because, it's just 110. It's just 110. So, it's just 208. And while we try to give that sense of urgency, it's not quite manufacturing in that same regard of that, because you don't have it. And that's just limited to the face of liabilities and other things that you can't avoid.
And what are maybe some of the things that stand out, like taking the positive side, that when you see, you're like, oh my God, like that person should definitely talk to me. Again, it could be a certification maybe that you see in the industry, a class that they've taken. What
big things, if they know drives, and know more than just know basic operation of, you got the PowerFlex 525s back there. We have a lot of 70s and bigger drives.
Yep.
So that they have some understanding what a HIM is and knowing how to do some of that basic copycatting and knowing, how that is different than a basic motor starter. That's huge. Having that PLC knowledge, not so necessarily that you can go online and put in AFIs and jumpers, but knowing that every input is a parallel circuit, every output is a parallel circuit, and they're not electrically linked. That goes a long way. But I think the biggest thing is having a basic understanding of troubleshooting. That's what's lacking. It's not just turning on a computer and looking at bits. Identifying, is an input being made? Is an output on but nothing's turning on? I got called in once, and there's two network switches that did. There was a network switch that didn't have power, and someone said, "Well, that's a programming issue." I'm like, "No, it's a power issue," and it turned out to be a power supply that went bad. Because in understanding what is networking, what is programming, what's discrete, what's analog, that's huge. And when I'm looking at, and unfortunately we're in a choosing beggar market with skilled trades. So if they have most of that, we'll train the rest. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to engineers, I've just gone through a search and screen for a couple engineers. And one of the questions I like asking is, one of the questions I found that I think was fun was, tell me your favorite and least favorite thing about the Allen Bradley platform. Because it shows me the depth of their knowledge, that they show how much they've worked with it. Because everyone that's worked with the platform will say, hey, this is, I love the backwards compatibility of Rockwell. Said no one. if they've worked with other manufacturers, say, well, I like Siemens with this, the function blocks are fun, but the way they do network, the communications is kind of swamp. So it can show me depth of knowledge and also give me their personality, that they can joke about their job. And it's not like life or death. Yes, it is life and death when we go in there. But at ultimate day, we're producing manufacturing. We're making a product that makes our lives better. In my case, I'm making a product that keeps people's homes warm in the winter and cool in the summer. And it can be life and death, but it is just a product at the end of the day.
And I like that question, Dan. I want to like really quickly comment on the question that you asked about Alan Bradley, because I think, you know, again, if you browse the web and you search for, you know, PLC programmer questions, you're going to find a lot of like a very technical, oh, explain to me what an XIC is, or like, what's the difference between PLC and DCS? And I don't think anyone truly asks that at an interview unless they, again, have no knowledge themselves of automation. And your question really brings out, I think, a more important discussion, because from that you can segue into, again, a multitude of things. Like the person can answer with you know, their own experience, and then you can ask, well, why do you think that is so, right? And you can very easily, I feel, gauge not only their knowledge in Alan Bradley, but by contrasting it to other platforms. And again, obviously there's caveats to that. They might only list Alan Bradley. What is your favorite and worst thing about that specific platform? But you can segue into other discussions and really understand what they've done, what they're looking to do, where their interests lie, more than just like a very textbook definition of an instruction.
Yeah, because hopefully they've gotten to that point where they have some knowledge, but let's plumb the depth. And if you've never been with Alan Bradley, okay, I've done TIA Portal. Yeah, and if I'm in an interview, I'm like, well, I've not really done Rockwell stuff, but in TIA Portal, one of the things I like is, you know, I's and Q's. That doesn't confuse me at all. Is, you know, it's 8-bit, setup. I can change my IO on the fly a little bit more easily, so I'm not hamstrung by the slot location. You know, I can go into depth a lot more on things, and it allows us to piggyback off of things and allow them to bring up stuff that's funny, you know, like, you know, my favorite thing about Rockwell is the fact they have GIFs hidden in the factory talk symbol manager of like Mayor McCheese and the guy that drunk too much lab soda or whatever. You know, at least there's humor and you can get a sense of people. I think engineers have that. And when I was interviewing people, the other thing that they often do is they told me what they did. They didn't show me what they did. The most impressive things is they showed me, not by saying, well, I'm good at troubleshooting, I know Rockwell. No, I said, well, I had this situation where everything wasn't working. When come to find out, the drive lost its program because of a bad battery backup, so I had to re-download the drive. And then when we were going through, we realized that the contactor wasn't pulling in, and someone put a 24-volt coil in there when it should have been 120. You're showing me that your step-by-step process, and even if you're an electrician going in, have examples of that stuff. So when you go in the interview, you will stand up against the guys there to say, well, I know how to use a multimeter. I know how to do this. You know, we remember stories a lot more than just me spouting off random facts. And that was one of the things that my MDiv taught me, is we're very story driven.
I love that. No, I think that that's very good. And I think that that's really good interview topic, interview prep for honestly everyone, is we do remember stories. And if they can tell you something interesting about themselves or about the things that they've done, it's going to stand out. And 20 or 50 interviews later, you're going to remember the stories. You're not going to remember the guy who said, you know, I can program Rockwell and Siemens and know how to use a multimeter. That becomes much more difficult. And so we are running down on time, Dan, but I have a story question for you. One of the things that I always remember every time we talk, you love roller coasters. Can you like tell everyone why you love roller coasters and how that correlation of roller coasters connects to control systems and industrial automation, please?
Actually, I can. I grew up going to Cedar Point. Grew up in Toledo, Ohio, going to Cedar Point, seeing like the Magnum, Raptor. I just loved it. Well, I fell out of it a little bit when I got to college and started, but recently, you know, when Mean Streak got converted into Steel Vengeance, I just got hooked again. And I come to find out there's a company, I think it's Irving Ordney out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. They do nothing but controls for roller coasters. And I started following their YouTube, and I just got like, whoa. And I started looking around at amusement parks. You see industrial switches, you see safety circuits, you see push button, industrial Allen Bradley push buttons, you see panel views as your operator station, and just got me more in love with things and seeing these simple machines that are being driven by automation and going on them and seeing how safe they are, understanding. Heck, I went to a Kennywood in Pittsburgh 2 weeks ago, and literally on the roller coaster right in front of me is a small industrial, like electrical cabinet, basically sitting there controlling all the safety stuff. It's cool to see all the stuff that I'm training and teaching on is helping me have fun too. And so, that's why I like him. They're fun, and you can go upside down and experience speed and thrills. But now as a technician, seeing all the stuff and seeing the safety circuits and understanding block zones. Like, I'll shout out this guy who's an engineer. His name's Ryan, but he has a YouTube channel called Toro Ryan, and he will literally break through the engineering side of roller coasters. And if you want to know what a block zone is, he'll tell you all about it. So,
Toro Ryan,
El Toro Ryan, named after the large Intamin prefab wooden coaster in Great Adventure in New Jersey. But El Toro Ryan. He's got some vlogs that are a little humorous and kind of, but he's a civil engineer by day, and he makes these videos that will explain some of the problematic coaster elements of things. And it's just really fascinating just watching them. And there's another guy named Amusement Labs on YouTube that will go through some of that. Literally, there's a KUKA robotic arm at a coaster down in Universal Studios controlling everything on the Harry Potter ride. And seeing all that stuff is like, whoa, this is awesome.
Really? It's a KUKA arm?
Yeah, it's a KUKA arm. It's a Harry Potter Forbidden Journey, I think.
I think I went on that ride. If it's the one that they installed a couple of years ago, then I think I went on that ride, but I didn't realize that's what it was.
Yeah, it's literally a KUKA arm that will on a track that will spin you around and do things like that. I don't know. I forget which one exactly. I know it's there. I think it's Forbidden Journey, but I haven't ridden it. I just know it's one of the Harry Potter ones at Universal Florida.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So I appreciate that, Dan. You're actually the third out of the last 5 or 6 guests that we've touched on amusement parks and roller coasters. So thank you for that. I think it is a theme within industry is that people love amusement parks, people love roller coasters. Now, I appreciate that. And so as we're wrapping up, I'm going to do Vlad's favorite non-sponsored segment. I call this the Audible segment, where we ask people for their favorite books or a book suggestion that they would have for folks, and then Vlad's going to immediately go and download it on his Audible.
Okay. Well, I have two. One is one that helped me figure out what I want to do with my life, and it's a book by Gene Edward Veith called "A God at Work." It's all about vocation. So if you're a Christian focused person and want to figure out what the doctrine of vocation is, I highly recommend it. For those that may not be in a Christian circles, I would recommend Jocko Willnick's stuff. I really like his book of leadership strategies. He's really big on extreme ownership, and he's a former Navy SEAL. I really like his podcast, and that was the last book that really got me thinking and going through things and convicting and other things of that nature.
To confirm, God at Work, that's by Gene Edward Veith, right? Junior? Is that the right one?
Yeah,
okay.
Yep. So I think he teaches at Patrick Henry College, at least he did. And that helped me transition from ministry and realizing a job is a good thing. It's not, you don't have to be a missionary and all that other stuff. Serving and loving your neighbor through your vocation is a good thing. Making product is a good thing for people.
Interesting. No, thank you for that. So we've had a couple of Jocko Willnick suggestions in the past, but that's a different offering. And I think that'll be very interesting for many of the people who listen. So thank you for that, Dan.
I was just gonna say I'd be really curious to hear maybe some of the feedback. I haven't met someone who went to his. I think he's got seminars now, Jocko, across the U.S. I don't know if you've been personally, Dan, but I'm certainly considering it because I've listened to a lot of his stuff and I've read his book, so I think it's interesting.
I just watch the podcast and get convicted as tweets at 4:00 in the morning when he's working out. So
I love it. And so last question that I have for you, Dan, is who should reach out to you?
If you're looking for a job as an electrician or maintenance mechanic, yes, in beautiful Richmond, Indiana, I would love to talk with you. Shameless plug. But anyone that wants to do a better job with industry and education, if you're on the education side, I've had educators reach out to me and I've helped where I can. That's why I keep all my YouTube stuff out there for free. But it is for that reason. Because Ivy Tech paid me to do it, and I feel guilty taking a cut when I got paid for them the first time, so I didn't want to do that. And B, I want education, this stuff to be out there in people's hands. And if you just want to continue this conversation, I would, especially if you're a Christian struggling with vocation or what, or anyone that's struggling with career and what to do. Yeah, I haven't got there. Heck, I might find myself doing something else in 8 years. Who knows? But for this time, this place, this is the job. I love it. Other than getting woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning for maintenance calls, I like what I do. I like the people that I have that are surround me, and it's been a good transition for me. But I'm still teaching for Ivy Tech part time too.
No,
Awesome.
amazing.
Thank you very much, Dan. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Do you have any last questions or comments, Vlad?
No, I was just gonna say I apologize for not bringing up your YouTube channel a little bit earlier, because I know you have a few Fanuc videos up there that are very interesting. As I've mentioned to you a couple of days ago, I am looking to learn a little bit more on the robotics side myself, so I think it's something that everybody should be checking out for sure.
Yeah, Pete Detmer from Madison College it has some good videos, as well as Adam Wylia from Fanuc. I think those are the two, and then me, that have the better videos for Fanuc, at least English wise.
Awesome.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Yes, thank you, Dan. Thank you, everyone. This has been episode 26 of Manufacturing Hub with Dave and Vlad. We look forward to seeing everyone next Wednesday. Until then, talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.